Hello everyone, and welcome to American Geordies. As reported, students were skunked during a peaceful protest. These students were leftover members of Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voice for Peace. Why am I calling them leftovers? Because the chapters for these two clubs were suspended in November after they failed to report a 10 days notice for a peaceful protest they held in late October of 2023. But there's some controversy around this because you see, it was earlier that October, the school changed their policy to make it so they need a 10 days notice. And they were real quick to suspend them too. And now I can see wanting to seek punishment against a group that didn't uphold school policy, but to suspend two groups only looking for peace sends a really bad message about their school's ideology. However, there might be something to said about the school's ideology. You see, at one point, you could get a mentorship through Columbia University for being an Israeli Defense Force soldier or veteran. I couldn't find on their website if this program is still in effect, but it definitely used to be. But I found something very similar that's still in effect. Columbia University offers a variety of dual degree programs. Essentially, you can get 2 degrees in 2 different countries at the same time. The programs listed are affiliated with schools in Dublin, Ireland, Paris, France, Kowloon Tong, Hong Kong, Tel Aviv, Israel, and List College, a college for Jewish education in New York. Now, even though other schools and cultures were listed, it should be noted that there seems to be a lean towards inviting Israelites and, in the past, IDF soldiers to their campus. You can see how this could make Palestinians or Muslims at Columbia University feel uneasy. Now, it makes sense why they were so quick to suppress the Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voice for Peace, making the decision by November 10th of 2023. Which is only 16 days after the walkout was held. I can find no other example of any other school offering benefits to foreign soldiers. No American university should offer benefits to foreign soldiers, especially in lieu of benefits for domestic students. At the start of the spring semester in January, frustrated protesters would not let themselves be silenced. They organized a peaceful protest on January 19th. Where 2 suspected IDF soldiers and/or veterans released skunk on the crowd. In fairness, unruly protesters got rowdy and were holding signs comparing the police to the KKK and calling for intifada. Intifada is a word that translates to rebellion, but has developed a connotation for extreme violence. Just like with the term jihad, I'd like to see its connotation de-escalate to what I think it was meant to convey. However, I think it's safe to assume that they meant violence. Speaking of violence, below I'm going to link an article about police getting unruly with the protesters, arresting 3 of them, and grabbing and throwing about other protesters. Mind you, neither of the suspected skunkers have been arrested. They committed a chemical attack and have not been arrested. Yet 3 protesters were. And in another Isrealie-leaning article that I will link below, they accused the university of not doing enough to protect Jewish students. The protests saw significant police intervention, and I would consider that to be a whole lot of the school doing the best they could to protect the Jewish students, or all students, and the community for that matter. After all, it was organized by a group not affiliated with the university, so how could they do more than police intervention? Now to get to the bottom of this, I need to introduce you to the Columbia Jewish Alumni Association, a group that formed after the Hamas attack on October 7th, 2023, in order to protect Jewish students and hold the university accountable for their discrimination policy. You can read more about it at columbiajewishalumni.org. If you navigate this site, I'd like to point out that they've started their own mentorship program where Jewish students can get paired with Jewish alumni for guidance through their course. This group has been working with influential alumni and donors to put leverage on the school to take action against pro-Palestine students, including billionaire Leon Cooperman, who stopped making donations in October 2023 No wonder they were so eager to suspend pro-Palestine groups. I feel like it's very key at this point in my script to affirm that supporting Palestine does not mean supporting Hamas. Supporting Palestine comes down to not wanting the IDF to take their innocent lives or wipe out their culture. Supporting Palestine can mean wanting peace between the two countries. Moving on, Isrealie-leaning, a Columbia Jewish Alumni Association board member, comments on the skunking incident as such. Nothing excuses spraying protesters. However, it's deeply disturbing and hypocritical that the university only worried about students being sprayed, but not a mob of students calling for the murder of everyone in Israel, cheering for a terrorist organization, and calling the police the KKK. It's also ironic that the same students who were calling the NYPD the KKK a few hours later sought out New York's finest help. Again, may I remind you that the skunkers have not been arrested for committing a chemical attack. The protesters saw major police intervention with their protest, but chemical attackers get off for free. Yet he claims the school is in favor of the mob of students. The mob was organized by a group not affiliated with the school. Also, accusing the pro-Palestine protesters of seeking similar genocide upon Israel as which they are facing in Palestine is super ironic, verging on hypocritical. A university spokesperson also released this statement. Last Friday's protests were unsanctioned. We are asking community members to abide by the university's event policies and procedures that are in place to order and to ensure, to the best of our ability, that we were able to deploy resources for the safety of everyone in our community, implying that the school couldn't deploy necessary safety resources because the community didn't work with them for the protest. Perhaps the protest would have been less unruly had the university been able to deploy the proper resources. But what incentive has the school given to make these groups want to work with them? They straight up suspended the school-affiliated groups that could have gone through the proper channels. So what? Was a non-school affiliated group supposed to just fill in a school that they're planning a protest when the school in question has made it clear that they aren't aligned with the protesters? The tensions are getting hotter the more Columbia University fights against the protests instead of delegating them. Imagine a timeline where the school said they could hold their protest in a certain area for a certain amount of time with a certain number of people. This would give them a level of control over the protest and satisfy the desires of the protesters. The longer these protests have to do their protests by going rogue, and the more the school positions themselves against them, the more tensions will rise. Also, when the school suspended Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voice for Peace, more than 1,000 Jewish alumni signed a note thanking the university for taking that step. Thanking the university for suspending a group that literally has Voice for Peace in the name. Almost like they're shooting themselves in the foot to appease this Columbia Jewish Alumni Association. I'm going to predict right now that similar protests will continue in New York and continue to get more violent until these pro-Palestine groups look like the bad guys. So how do we curb this issue? Well, first off, these groups need to be the bigger person and reach out to Columbia University and law enforcement on their own will to work with their protest, instead of putting the pressure on their community to deal with them as they go rogue. They should control the messages spread by the people in the protests by delegating a leader ahead of time to show up early and pass out or approve signs that align with the peaceful ideology that we need. This leader should also lead chants said by the group to avoid hate speech. And more active members of the group organizing the protest should comb through and eject unruly protesters to make sure that, to the best of our ability, we don't look like the bad guys for not wanting a genocide in Palestine. The last thing an anti-genocide person like myself wants is to look like they support crazy terrorists because of the out-of-control actions of a certain group. Spread this message to help protest responsibly and fight for the little guy. Like, comment, and subscribe to get more news, and have a wonderful rest of your day.